Good afternoon. I'm Jenny Gome, a sales executive leader, and I'm your MC for today. I begin by acknowledging the Boonwurrung people, traditional custodians of the Kulin Nation, the land on which we meet today. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. I'm delighted to welcome you all to the launch of Barrett's Sell Like a Woman program. You'll be hearing from 3 women with deep career experience in sales, sales leadership, and business leadership. Andrea McNaughton has been Managing Director of Loan Market since 2021. Prior to that, she held senior positions in the organisation, Executive Director, National Director of Network Growth, and State Director of Victoria and Tasmania from 2015. She's played a major part in making Loan Market the #1 brokerage in Australia. Prior to Loan Market, she worked with the Ray White Group in senior roles as CEO and General Manager for Ray White Victoria, and has held other leadership roles in the financial services industry. She has diverse experience working with cross-functional teams to support small business owners. Lynn Gallucci joined Invacare in April 2018 and in July 2020 was appointed Executive General Manager of Invacare Australian Funerals. She has over 25 years of experience working with national and international brands across retail, franchising, and the pharmaceutical sectors, and held executive roles at Myer Grace Brothers and Australian pharmaceutical industries. At Invacare, she is passionate about providing meaningful farewells for people who choose the Invacare brand, which includes White Lady Funerals. She holds tertiary qualifications in accounting, communication, psychology, and HR, and is a graduate of the Australian Institute of Company Directors. She also serves as a non-executive director with the Epilepsy Foundation and is chair of the Finance and Audit Committee. Sue Barrett, founder and managing director of Barrett, is a leading advocate for human-centred, ethical business, sales and leadership practices. She has run her own business and consulting education firm for 28 years, specialising in human-centred and sustainable sales and business growth strategies and systems. Sue is an advocate for women in sales and created Sell Like a Woman to help women in any role to develop their capabilities to have greater visibility, influence and presence in their industry. She's also a founding organiser of March for Justice and Voices of Goldstein, and Zoe Daniels campaign manager for the federal election in 2022. I'll just let you know about the format of our session. It will be a conversation with the panel for 40 minutes, after which time we'll take questions through the chat function on Zoom, and any questions we don't get to, we will provide an answer to you after the session. So let's begin. Andrea, Lynn and Sue, the 3 of you are capable and smart women. You could have chosen any profession. So why a career in sales and sales leadership? And what's one thing that you love about it? Andrea, let's start with you.
Thanks, Jenny, and thanks for having me, and congratulations on the program, Sue. Hopefully I'm a better salesperson than I am uploading my background on Zoom there. I can see that the logo's not reversed properly, so I apologise. It's a really good question, and I think, if I'm honest, it probably found me. I think coming out of university and not really being sure about what I wanted to do and starting in real estate sales, I just loved it. I loved how controllable I think it is around as a process. I loved the discipline of selling. I loved how much there is to learn. And I think the joy of helping people get from A to B, particularly around selling a house, it's something that you can make, you know, a really special event for them in their lives. And I like just how much knowledge, I suppose, goes into making that a great event and a great outcome. And I think the most thing I like about sales is that get whatever result you like. It's completely boundaryless. I think you can be creative and you can do as much or as little as you want to challenge yourself. And I think it's the best job that there is. And certainly working with people, I think, of a like-minded approach to selling is a lot of fun.
Right. Lynn?
Similar to what Andrea's just said, I think. I really enjoy solving problems, and I love doing that through and with people, and selling and sales seems to be a great way to marry those two things together. I'm a bit like Alice in Wonderland. I have a curiosity that's bigger than my brain, and so I like to follow questions. And quite often the success that you see with salespeople is where they're willing to ask questions to try and understand both where the other person's coming from and what the possible solutions or options could be. So being able to follow curiosity in a non-judgmental way, and people going, oh, that's just you being a salesperson, rather than you being, aren't you a nosy person, has been really helpful. So I think that's been a big part of it. It's interesting, and I listened to you, Andrew, just talk about, people buying houses. Until I actually came and worked in funerals, I never really understood that funeral people have a responsibility to sell as well, because like houses, these things only happen, not many times in your life. Hopefully you might have to organise a funeral many times, perhaps you don't buy a house many times, and so you want to make sure the person you're partnering with in that sales decision is understanding what it is you want to do, and making sure you do it in the most empathetic way. And so it's a lovely opportunity for me to be able to combine all of that in a really purposeful way.
Thanks, Lynn. So,
yes, well, like many women, I actually got into sales and sales leadership by accident. I didn't know actually what I wanted to do as a career, after leaving school and finishing university. I only knew that I had to learn the ropes of business so that I could actually be in charge of my career and have agency in my own destiny. So after completing my science degree, I actually fell into my first proper sales role at 21, when I actually became a sales rep in the pharmaceutical industry. But sadly, this is actually where I learned how not to sell, because what they taught us to do was to show up and throw up product information to these doctors. And it just didn't feel right to me. It just felt really at odds. So initially I hated sales. And I actually, it wasn't until I actually moved into the recruitment industry, which is a tough sales career itself, and I learned the ropes there about how to actually run my own business, if you like. It's like my apprenticeship, where I actually interviewed about 8,000 B2B salespeople and managers face to face, that my curiosity was really piqued about what it takes to be a really good salesperson and sales leader. So what I realized, that really nothing was actually documented back then, and sales is very personality driven. So as someone who loves finding patterns and solving puzzles and debunking myths, including outdated sales stereotypes, I actually started to map these competencies, and I actually discovered something really interesting about the things that make great salespeople and leaders. So I suppose my love of selling really came through trying to sort out what good sales actually looks like for myself first, and then later for other people, so that we could actually look at how to sell better, finding our own proactive, authentic, curious, human-centered, problem-solving, collaborative salesperson, all the things that Andrea and Lynn have just described. And this actually then helped, create opportunity, do great work with clients and teams and communities. And I think sales is such a great thing to turbocharge our careers for all the right reasons. And to be honest, that's actually why I started down the road less travelled and started Barrett Consulting Group in January 1995. And why I'm really proud to actually be launching Sell Like a Woman today, because we know society's expectations and sales are actually changing for the better. And sales is a great career for women, because people are wanting more human-centered, respectful, productive, ethical and collaborative ways of buying, selling and doing business. So that's my bit.
thank you. We'll move on to the second question. Sales is a great profession for women. We've just heard that. It gives us agency, power over our professional journey, financial independence, but does sales have an image problem with women? Start with Sue.
Okay. Well, as perhaps leading on from where I finished off just before, through all of my work over the years, I've discovered that mastering a sales career, whatever your role, is about having agency. And agency is about having faith in our abilities to actually proactively pursue and develop our careers, grow sales. You know, it's about working with clients and others, being able to handle a wide range of tasks and situations, achieve our goals, and hopefully earn what we're worth. But to be fair, sales does have an image problem. Sales has actually been seen largely as a man's career and rarely promoted as a career in which women could excel. So this is in part due to the aggressive, always be closing sales stereotypes, and also these hyper-competitive, individualistic nature of sales careers that's been promoted by various, sales training gurus, business, and the media, to be fair, who position selling more as a combat sport rather than the collaborative partnership team-based role that it actually is. So with these outdated stereotypes as a reference, women are often labelled as too weak to do sales, believe it or not. Their sales abilities, including negotiation skills and stakeholder management, are often underestimated, and their knowledge is also devalued. And ironically, when the excellent qualities of women are actually brought, that they bring to the sales profession are recognised, which is not very often, I have to confess, they're often seen as a novelty or an anomaly by most senior managers. So many women who pursue sales careers don't feel sufficiently valued or supported at work and are more likely to look for a new job within the next 3 years. Women and men start their careers with the same level of ambition, however, but at organisations where employees report less diversity, the drop-off in ambition is actually faster for women. So the lack of recognition of what women bring to sales careers creates real obstacles for women, with them receiving unsolicited advice to change their fields, lower earning capacity, and also far fewer promotions to sales leadership roles. So it's important to note that women's ambitions are not the problem. Women want top jobs. It's just that many women still have mixed feelings about the sales profession and often leave it off their career list, or if they do end up selling, they fall into sales by accident or out of necessity. So I'm hoping by us, shining a spotlight on this, that these outdated traditional sales stereotypes, personality-driven, product-based, transactional, reactive and aggressive sales tactics, which have proven to be much less effective and unappealing, are going to be a thing of the past, and that women and younger generations can actually step into what we know as good sales practice, because sales definitely needs a rebrand.
Great. Lynn, does sales have an image problem with women?
Yes. I'm guessing you want more than that, so I'll keep going for a minute. Yes, it does. And as I'm listening to Sue there, the picture that jumps into my mind is a spectrum of characteristics that enable you to be successful in a sales professional role. And where I particularly notice it is that, and whether you label them feminine or masculine characteristics, they're across the spectrum. And particularly earlier generations, the balance was more at the spectrum of this win-lose scenario, or much stronger, more definitive, more defined as masculine characteristics. And it's been a real generational issue, if you think about it. So the stereotypes, what we saw in the television, what we saw in movies, were very much win-lose. Sue refers to it as a combat sport, which I really like. And so, yes, it's got an image, it's got a generational image problem as well. So for people that grew up and had to fight, particularly women, I should say, who had to fight during the 80s and 90s to be considered serious contenders in sales roles, and didn't want to adopt the approach that was traditional at the time, I'm starting to see that their view around sales is very different to when I spend time with people in the team now who come from the millennial generation, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, who are coming in saying, well, actually, we want the collaboration. We want to understand what the opportunity is. We're open-minded to some of those solutions. So it has got an image, but it has an image issue, but I think the generations are changing as we go through, which is positive as we respond to it. I think the challenge for us here, Jenny, and for everybody is, if it's a combat sport, how do we lean in a way that enables us to professionally battle wits without someone being injured? I have no problem playing hard. I just don't want to be injured. And so if we can find ways to lean in using each other's strengths, can we leverage that better than we have? The last point that I'd make around here is a particular reference to selling like a woman. And the strength that I see around this is, whilst it has its genesis in sales, the application that it has to broader leadership context, the ability for people who sell like a woman to actually take on broader roles and adopt more flexibly in an environment where, you know, every 3 years we're going to have a new career, essentially. Those skills that you learn through the Selling Like a Woman program and structure will enable you to have more options going forward. So yes, there's an image problem. I see some real positivity around societal trends and programs like this that will help that decrease over time.
Thanks, Lynn. Andrea.
Yeah, I think it's a great conversation and really interesting topic. And I think, you know, sales is the lifeblood of any organisation, really. And really what drew me to Sue in the first place was a far more sort of intelligent approach to the discussion, because moving to financial services, I hear a lot of people say, oh, I'm not a salesperson, I'm in strategy. Yet, as Sue would say, but how are you going to sell that strategy? And, you know, how much of that is product and service design? And if you're not, you know, you can't ask somebody to do something that you won't do yourself. So I think a lot does come, and I know Sue talks about it a lot in her program, to sales leadership. You know, you can't just throw someone out there and give them a quarterly target and say good luck. You know, I think it is about having the right structure in place and the right support and being around good leaders that are good at sales, that really inspire and help you to achieve those results. So if I look across Loan Market, which is a mortgage broking company, our top salespeople, our top brokers are females. And I think that's the case because they're so good at selling, but they don't actually call it selling. They're really assisting customers, which obviously at the end of the day is the purpose of the business. So I do think it has an image problem, but we do a lot of work with Professor Boris Groysberg from Harvard, and he talks about how it's a lost art, how people have lost the ability to sell, and how that really can sort of alienate them without the right skills they need later on in life in big careers. Because if you become so removed from the actual customer, the proposition, it's very hard to set a strategy and you won't be able to sell it, ironically. So for some reason, yes, the word does have an image problem.
Thank you. And you'll hear us always saying that everybody lives by selling something. How can businesses and clients benefit by having more women in sales and sales leadership roles? Lynn?
I'd like to sort of work through an example here, which some of you may be aware of. So we like to be half a step ahead of our clients, not far enough that makes them feel uncomfortable at a time when most people are emotionally disrupted, dealing with a death. Not everybody is grieving, but they're all emotionally disrupted. And we want to just demonstrate, I guess, what the opportunities are for them depending on where they choose to go. And White Lady Funerals is a really good example of this. You know, it started with a brainstorm about disruption. It wasn't there 40 years ago, but certainly in terms of the way that it's been explained to me, I recognised that there was a really simple opportunity. Everybody knew that it was black suited men who were selling funerals. And so what's the opposite of that? White ladies selling funerals. Now, of course, the underlying brand ethos is around empathy, and that's been able to be built out over time to be a woman's understanding. And, you know, we recognise that can mean different things to different people at different times, but it enabled us to have this really fluid and flexible platform to be able to respond to what was needed through primarily that women's understanding. It's a really interesting story, and White Lady has the highest brand recognition and reach of any funeral brand in Australia. I was even listening to a TED talk from America where a woman referenced it a couple of weeks ago, so it actually has incredible reach. What I like about this story is a couple of things. Frankly, 40 years ago, InvoCare was male dominated in the senior roles. And so that shows you that men can adopt these kind of characteristics as well to understand what's needed and support and grow a brand opportunity. It is about being clear about what it's supposed to be and how you go about doing it. So the opportunity was identified, it was executed in a different way. So there's an advantage of 40-year-old brand that came out of the exact opposite of some of the characteristics we're talking about, with the highest reach in Australia.
Thank you. Andrea.
I think for us, much like Lynn said, and congratulations, that's a wonderful achievement. You've got to be reflective of the communities that you serve, really, if you want to help more customers and grow your business. So I think the interesting thing about finance broking and finance is that women are actually very good at it. And I think they don't expect it to go as well as it does, and you get a lot of referrals. So I think that diversity, as you say, around, it's women that make the financial decisions in most households, etc. So being able to relate to those people. And we started the Leading Ladies of Loan Market, and we do a lot of work on financial literacy for everyone, male and female. So I think when I get advice about how to improve, often a male will tell me to be more statesman-like, and I just laugh because, how am I going to be a statesman? So it is very interesting. So I think the more examples there are, of successful, highly intelligent, highly capable, really interesting, aspirational, inspirational women, the easier it is for others to go and relate to that and say, well, I can do that too. And I think women are so great at helping each other as well. And that talent is really easy to replicate. You end up sort of like attracts like, and surrounding yourself with top performers, I think, is a really powerful way for women to help other women be more successful.
Thank you. Sue, how can businesses and clients benefit by having more women in sales and sales leadership roles?
Okay, well, as you probably would have gathered, I've been pulling together the stats and the research. So, of course, anecdotally, exactly what Lynn and Andrea are saying, you can see it, when you see more people like you around and you can see sort of things happening, it's very encouraging. But I thought I'd just share with you some of the stats that actually will help back up what we've just been talking about, but also some interesting things that you may not have expected when you actually start to have more women involved with sales and sales leadership. So this research is being around women in sales, started around sort of early 2000s, both locally for myself, but also internationally. And it actually showed that women are often outperforming men when it comes to sales results. They're bringing certain qualities that actually differ from those traditional old sort of stereotypes. And I'll unpack some of these now for us. We also saw that when organisations have more women in their sales teams, they actually see greater profits. So there seems to be more margin actually happening because women tend not to work in competition with their clients, not trying to outmuscle each other. Back to what Lynn was saying, it's not about injuring people. Instead, they tend to establish a shared vision with clients. They want to actually cultivate healthy and mutually beneficial relationships. And how they do that is through things like collaborating and doing joint consultative problem solving so that they can actually craft the best solutions with their clients. They actually work with them. It's not an arm wrestle combat sport. The other thing that they're really good at doing is women are better at aligning customer and supplier, as in their own company, strategic objectives. And what they try to do is create sort of a shared perspective so that both parties can actually see a better outcome. So it really is the win-win. That's what they're looking for. And what we've noticed and what Forbes reported recently is that about 74% of clients are more likely to buy if they feel heard and understood and that someone will work with them. So I think this is telling us, in no uncertain terms, that really people want to work with each other. They don't want to have to go through all the, sort of the guessing games and who's going to do what to me and that whole wariness. I mean, trust is at a low at the moment because of all sorts of things. And I think what we can do is reclaim trust by actually operating in a much more healthy and effective way. So contrary to the lone wolf salesperson stereotype, okay, because that's still out there and it's still promoted and it's the individual that, succeeds, which is not true, but that's the stereotype that's portrayed. Many women prefer to actually work as a team, collaborating with each other, both across sales and sales teams and key departments, particularly marketing. which leads actually to better integration of sales and marketing efforts, because we often know, we see this whole marketing versus sales thingy. We don't want that, and it shouldn't happen. So when you're actually working with other departments to make it actually work, what happens is better client solutions, better client attraction and retention, and with that, of course, better sales revenue and profits. So here's some other interesting stuff as well, because it gets better. Having more women in sales teams and in sales leadership roles actually helps increase diversity within sales teams, and this, and as a bonus, also increases the diversity of your client groups, which actually helps you get into more markets and attract and retain clients. So it's a business case. It's a no-brainer that we should have more women in sales and sales leadership roles. It's really good for business. When it comes to sales leadership, and sadly, there's still a definite gender gap when it comes to sales leadership. According to the Sales Leadership Gender Gap globally in 2019, there are fewer women leaders in sales than any other business function except for supply chain and logistics. So supply chain and logistics and sales are at the bottom of the rung when it comes to having women in sales leadership, in leadership roles. So go figure, because women-led sales teams tend to be more gender diverse and often have higher win ratios than men-led teams. There's more. Women-led sales teams also show superior performance with customers and higher sales unit performance. They also offer help to their teams with work-related problems, which also leads to greater organisational performance. And they have higher employee retention and better job satisfaction and involvement across their teams. There's another thing too, that sales manager gender is a predictor of sales teams, what we call organisational citizenship behaviour. The results show that teams led by women display significantly higher levels of civic virtue, sportsmanship, altruism, courtesy, cheerleading, peacemaking, and overall citizenship, like being a decent human being. So you're actually seeing much healthier environments. So the smart organisations are already acting to rectify the gender imbalance in sales and sales leadership. So because they can see the advantage. So I thought these stats are really, really powerful.
Thanks, Sue. It's very interesting and inspiring research for us to consider. Before I ask my next question, I just want to remind everybody to post your questions and we'll be answering questions during the Q&A. What's a significant challenge or bias that you've experienced in your sales, business or leadership career, and how did you address it? Lynn, let's start with you.
Sure. I just find imposter syndrome is so prevalent for women. I think I'll probably count on one hand the number of women that actually say, I've got this, I can do this, I deserve to be here. There's an amazing study that says, 10 women looked at an ad and they say, I can't do one of those things, so therefore this job isn't for me. Same men, 10 men looked at that ad and said, I can't do one of these things, this job is for me. It's just a completely different perspective. And certainly as my professional life unfolded, it was actually easier to be self-deprecating first rather than let someone do it for me. So how do you get past that stuff? Identify the challenge. How do you get past it? You need to get help. And you can do that in a variety of ways. I think Helen Robinet's on this call. I imagine she is. She introduced me to Sue at a time when I really needed some help around understanding, in a new market and a new environment, how do you sell in a way that was going to be sensitive and well received? So you get help. You ask people who know more than you do. You go and get some help from your team and you say, let me sort of try and understand what thinking would be helpful when I'm in a situation where I don't think I've got the skills to be, a good leader or a good sales leader. Recognise where there's strengths in other areas. I mentioned earlier about my admiration for the current generation of sales leaders coming through. They have clear expectations and clear purpose, and that makes it really easy to support and get behind. So I think that's another way. The other thing that I suggest around kind of this imposter syndrome theory is around sizing it. And we were talking about this in our executive team the other week. And my colleague, Victoria, who runs our customer, is in charge of our customer, executive general manager of customer and marketing here, she told me she's named her inner critic. And so her inner critic is called Barbara. And when she gets too loud, she turns around and says, Barbara, shut up and move on. And that helps her silence that voice and allows her to get on with being the amazing executive that she is. My daughter applies this to spiders, by the way. So she's named the spiders in her garage, so she's not frightened. But I think that imposter syndrome, we need to size that better, particularly in a sales and leadership context, so that it is not getting in our way and that we can recognise it and put it to one side. So that's both what I think is one of the biggest challenges for women in sales, and some ideas about how to get it out of your way.
Thank you. Andrea.
I think it's a good question. I think it's really about, choosing who you sort of partner with, whether that's in life or in a workplace. I think I've been very fortunate. My challenge would have been around being probably the youngest and probably quite outnumbered, which is probably not unusual for many women. I think what I love about sales is you've always got the data to fall back on. So like Sue's saying, I haven't struggled so much with the belief in the ability that I can do the job. I think what I've been naive about probably is other people's perceptions of you able to do that job, but that never sort of worried me. But I've probably been extremely fortunate because I've been in such a good company and with such good leaders and such a good team around me. So when you move into new markets, like you were saying, Lynn, then you are in new scenarios and you are meeting new people, and those perceptions, and they're sort of very overwhelmingly male in financial services. I can understand that they would like to think that, but that's why I love that sales is so data driven. So I think the results, speaking for themselves around that. My challenges would be more around not liking the sound of my own voice, which I apologise today is extremely poor. So I think that's more of a vanity. But in terms of the ability to get the job done, I think women are always so hard on themselves and they're so committed to upskilling. We're constantly learning at what we're doing. I don't think I would ever be complacent around a contribution in the role. So really focused on how do we just keep getting better rather than sort of I'm not enough or any of that. Hopefully that helps. But I do think you're never going to really be happy if your values are not in sync with the environment that you're working in or living in.
Thank you. So,
thank you. Well, everything that Lynn and Andrea said, and now I'm going to dive into some of the sort of broader environmental things too that can cause us some challenges as well. So where to start? Well, besides the outdated sales stereotypes that we talked about, there's still a lack of representation, sponsorship and commitment to career advancement and diversity in too many organisations when it comes to women. There's also inflexible work practices, although with COVID now we're seeing more options there. And also there's out of touch motivation and reward systems. So there's some of the challenges there too. So there are a few that I could name, but the one I really want to touch on today is everyday sexism and unfortunately sexual harassment, which is still problematic and extremely exhausting. I mean, when I think about this topic and this question, I think when I was a 21-year-old drug rep, a doctor locked me in his surgery one morning, and I won't go into the details. Suffice to say, I was lightning fast and demanded that he let me out. He let me out. And when I then told my 60-year-old sales manager, who was a man, about this incident, he said, "Oh, that's just him. Don't worry about it." I mean, this is the sort of stuff that many of us, I'm been around a bit now, but this is, it still goes on. And you'd think things had got better since, but I need to tell everyone here that sadly, Australia has slipped backwards on the 2021 Global Gender Gap Index. The World Economic Forum actually ranked Australia at 50 out of 156 countries in 2021, with our rankings in terms of women's equality and empowerment falling dramatically, wait for this, from 12th to 70th. In economic participation and opportunity, amongst other damning statistics. This is unacceptable. So, which is one of the reasons why I've been fighting for women's equality all my life. I mean, I'm sure we all remember when we heard about the alleged rape of Brittany Higgins, when that story broke on Monday, the 15th of February, 2021. That's last year. You know, I, like many women, lay awake that night going over all the dreadful things that had happened to me and my friends in our careers and our lucky escapes. And so the next day, I actually released a 2017 article I'd written called "No More Harvey Weinsteins, Please," which actually got picked up by 2CC Canberra, where I did a drive time radio interview on the 17th of February about the challenges women and girls face when it comes to safe workspaces and equality. So, I mean, Brittany Higgins' experience lit a fuse around the country, and via my active network on Twitter, I actually found myself as one of the founding organisers for March for Justice event that saw over 110,000 people attend 200 events around Australia on the 15th of March 2021 to actually protest against the dreadful treatment of women in Parliament House, Canberra. Now, my role, amongst many, was to make sure that the messaging was inclusive and human-centred and that people could find agency in that. And so that went up on the website, and essentially I wanted to highlight that what we were dealing with wasn't just a women's issue, but was a human issue. And that's why I'm so proud that of the 110,000 people that turned up, roughly 25% were men and boys who stood by our side. We need more men and boys standing by our side because this is a human issue. So I've seen firsthand the power of women and their supporters to actually unite and raise awareness and ignite change on many levels. I mean, I've witnessed the power of community, especially women who have actually found their voices. And together, you know, we can actually create change in business and community. I mean, the ripple effect of March for Justice is actually still being felt across the country and beyond. So we know that people want more respectful, inclusive and collaborative ways of selling and doing business and just being with each other. And gender diversity in sales and leadership isn't just about equality and social justice. It's in today's world, it's actually about better sales and business performance. I mean, it's about great reputations, loyal clients, healthy cultures, and fair and more prosperous communities. So to me, when I think about Sell Like a Woman, for at least, you know, it's a professional expression of many years of advocacy for equality, integrity, respect, and justice. And society and the sales profession are changing. And that's why I think it's time we start adopting things like Sell Like a Woman.
Thanks, Sue. Thank you for bringing a community perspective into the room.
My pleasure.
Achieving mastery in any profession is, of course, critical. So how important is it that women do programs like Sell Like a Woman to build critical skills and capabilities, and how will it change the profession? I'll start with you, Andrea.
Well, I think it's fantastic, and I think it's a great way to be able to put your toe in the water and see if this is something that I want to do. Like, you look right now and think, what will I study? You know, what does that really involve? And I think it's an area that you can use in any part of your life. So I think it's incredibly important. I think just to empower people, because I think when women do get into selling careers, whatever industry, they are surprised at how quickly they take off and how skilled and how good they are at that. And just, you know, what great business owners they make and what great salespeople they make. So I think giving them that confidence and filling the gaps. I know Sue was the first person to do a sales program as part of an MBA, you know, connecting the dots from, you know, cash to settlement, if you like, in terms of somebody trying to create a living. I think it's incredibly helpful, and I think it's really exciting and well overdue. It's hard to believe that there's not a lot of these courses around, but I think it will really help that next generation, that wave at any age of people coming into their own business and being confident that they can provide for their own future, which hopefully, as Sue says, has a really positive impact in the community, where people are much more confident around their day-to-day existence. So I think it's really exciting.
Thank you. Lynn.
I really like what Andrea said there about building empowerment. I think that, you know, self-efficacy and building empowerment is so important for all of us. I love the 3E model, so exposure, education and experience, active engagement in building those active listening skills, positioning options, identifying those, and committing to practice. And where I see that linking to Sell Like a Woman program is that the Sell Like a Woman program offers that structured learning, that's the education piece, but it also offers the chance to learn alongside like-minded individuals and be able to strengthen, build networks, but strengthen and build information exchange so that we can have a benefit more broadly than our own individual learning. We can actually share that more broadly with other people around us, because one of the most important things for us to recognise, and I was completely captivated by the work, Sue, you've done around good citizenship, and looking at that, making us not only better sales professionals, but making us better professionals, but making us better people as well, all comes linking both of those things. The empowerment that Andrea mentioned and the citizenship that Sue mentioned means that we can have a positive impact more broadly than we might immediately think. So that would be that.
Thank you. And before I go to Sue, I'll just let you know that we will be putting details of the website and the programs onto the chat just before we finish today. Sue, over to you. Achieving mastery in any profession is critical, and I'm repeating it again because I know people are still coming through and coming into the session. How important is it that women do programs like Sell Like a Woman to build critical skills and capabilities, and how will it change the profession?
Yes, well, I think, you know, as we all know, I live by the philosophy, everybody lives by selling something. And when we look at selling, it's a craft and it's something that we can actually master. And we can apply in many situations, personally and professionally. I mean, what gives me great joy, I know you mentioned up the top at the beginning that I was also Zoe Daniels' campaign manager. We actually had 1,000 active volunteers. And through that campaign, we got to door knock over 44,000 homes. And most people had never been in sales before. And we taught them how to do that respectfully in a very client-centered, engaged way, in this case, citizen engaged. And the feedback I got from people both during and post the election was that they'd learnt skills and things that they'd never actually done before. And by having this opportunity to show them how to do things like door knocking, they really felt proud of themselves. And they actually said they liked door knocking. I mean, who would have imagined? There was just such a wonderful feedback loop in terms of showing people how to use the power of sales to help, you know, generate opportunity and engage citizens. But, you know, when I think of selling, it's a fantastic career enabler for anyone, but particularly for women, which is why we actually develop these programs. And I can just give you a quick overview so you can get an understanding of the 3 levels we've got. The entry level is actually focused on what we would call mastering the sales essentials system. And it's designed for anyone, but also for women new to sales, or for those women who've actually not had any formal effective sales training, to really ignite and turbocharge their sales careers and their careers in general. So you don't have to be specifically in a sales role to benefit from learning about these things. The level 2 area is really, it's called Navigate Your Way Forward, and it's actually designed for women who are already selling and have mastered the sales essentials. But this program now really extends into examining and addressing the opportunities, the barriers and the biases we've spoken about today. So it's for women in sales and business, not just sales, but any role. It's designed to actually help women develop skills and tools and strategies necessary to channel our sales ambitions and get traction, to have a legitimate seat at the table, to help continue to debunk barriers and biases, and also to navigate our sales and business careers successfully and safely. The level 3 is really designed for leaders who actually want to create flourishing teams and cultures, all the things we've talked about, the benefits of actually having great client-focused, you know, human-centered systems. This program helps businesses and sales leaders develop environments that attract more women to their teams and create sales cultures that actually embrace diversity and empower women in sales and sales leadership. And we just know there's no better time to actually recognise and benefit from the contributions of women in sales and leadership, because the evidence is clear. You know, mastering ethical, human-centered sales practices does give women more agency and power over their careers, earning capacity and life choices. And to be fair, it actually makes everyone's lives better. It helps float the boat and raise the tide. That's what we want to see, is just better choices for everyone. So channeling more women into sales and leadership roles at every level and celebrating the value that they bring to the table to be honest, just makes good business sense. So that's why I think we really need to, have a push and encourage more of this stuff, however you want to go about it.
Thank you. Well, thank you to the three of you for sharing your knowledge and your stories and experience with us today. And now I'd really like to open up to the floor to bring some questions to you, and anyone on the panel can answer those questions. So the first question is, post-COVID, are we seeing more women in sales, or have we lost terrific performers? Lynn,
you won't be somebody to go forward. Thank you. I think this is a question that we're all facing every day. Yes, we've lost people, we've lost women. I said a few weeks ago, I don't know where everybody is. We're losing out of all of the key roles across Australia at the moment. Sales has been hard, particularly in a B2C environment in places like Victoria and New South Wales, when they've been challenged with not being able to be face-to-face. And be able to do the things that we talked about earlier, build a shared vision, understand what the need is. So yes, it does look like, anecdotally, it looks to me like we've lost people. There's an opportunity to always recover them, of course. I don't know, Sue, whether you've got any research around that or whether you've got any facts.
It's still a bit early at the moment, but I do know that people have been looking at their options. And I think once they see that, they can create, when we look at creating more flexible work environments where we can actually help people have more choice, people are starting to look. So some are staying because they're a bit uncertain. Others are out exploring. We don't have enough of evidence that I can see at the moment to say, but I think people are also sussing out how they were treated during COVID and and they're seeing more options available out there. And they're seeing different models that actually say how business can be done better. So watch the space is what I would say. I don't know about Andrea. Have you got anything that you're noticing?
We're really pleased that we've bucked the trend, actually, and we've grown both the number of female brokers and female business owners. But being in financial services, and the company was very quick to pivot to digital, and a lot of women led that. So, but it's obviously an essential service, finance and refinancing and purchasing and selling, etc., and helping landlords whose tenants no longer had to pay the rent. So I think financial services, or certainly broking, certainly loan market, we were fortunate to be able to grow that base, and we've continued to recruit strongly. We really haven't dropped our volumes yet, touch wood. So we've been really lucky. As an industry, more women have left, definitely. I think that whole who does the weight fall on at home, trying to manage, whether it's children or elderly people, etc. I think it is a really difficult one, and that's why we put so much effort into it as a company, because, as Sue says, it makes good business sense. They're terrifically talented performers. How do we attract more? How do we retain them? And how do we support them?
I think if you just look in that chat to Andrea, to your point, a lady called Stephanie's put in here, some people have lost their sales mojo. Where you've got that series of competing priorities, how do you actually make sure that you've got enough energy in your professional life to be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes? And you've written there about they're more anxious about reconnecting. I completely agree. There's a physical fear around reconnecting. And we know that mental wellbeing and emotional support is really being stretched for Australia or for the world over the last couple of years. It's the responsibility of all of us as leaders and as people to work out how to connect ourselves and connect others back to us. I think it's a really fair point to add to what you were saying, Andrea.
Actually, I was going to say with that thing, what we have noticed is that people that are much more extroverted, particularly in Victoria and with lockdowns, found COVID much more stressful in any role. And so, and if you're used to and like to be with people and have all of that, lots of, physical interaction with people, that's been really tough on some. Others of us, though, who are more introverted and are quite happy to have our own space and time and connect digitally and stuff, some of us have actually found this quite, okay. So it's kind of very interesting when you look at the different styles of people and where they get their energy from and actually how they enjoy engaging. So yeah, it could be situational. That's creating some of that mojo stuff, but how to stay in touch is important. We can get to that a bit later, but I thought I'd just throw that in there. Andrew, you're going to say something, sorry.
No, I think it's a good point. I think it's like we were saying earlier, I think sales on your own would be incredibly tough, that individualistic nature. I think being part of a team, I think, and having that good sales leadership, but that good sales team, regardless of which part of the company it's in, we're all in sales, I think is huge. Like you say, around, I'll definitely lose my mojo if I didn't have a good team. You know,
Yeah.
it's hard. Yeah.
You got a question here from Andrew. How can we get men and women to work effectively in the sales environment in ways that are supportive and complementary, respecting the different approaches men and women inevitably bring to the role?
I might, if I can kick off with that, I think firstly, sell like a woman is not saying women are better than men, because they're just doing things more often that men can learn as well. Anyone can learn these things. So I think what we want to do is take away the gender lens and just look at what good sales now looks like, and that we can just clearly steer away from those old traditional, aggressive, combat sport type sales approaches. They need to be a thing of the past. When we bring this to the fore and we actually say, this is what good sales looks like, let's develop our capabilities as humans and really put that forward. And I think that will help reduce this whole, he, she kind of gender issue. So let's bring that to the fore. That would be a really great thing to do. But also, humans bring all sorts of qualities to the table. We bring all sorts of perspectives. I think when we value, people's perspectives, and we create safe spaces for people to listen and to be heard and understood, and we create the psychological safety for people to be able to speak up and share ideas and not feel like they're going to be punched down on or made to feel like an idiot. This is not just a gender thing, this is anyone. So when we start creating more psychologically safe, healthy work environments, I think particularly younger people of any gender and women they really value that. You ask a lot of people, they want this. We have to change how we create we want to create healthy work environments, not these combat sort of one-upmanship kind of scenarios, hierarchical structures and so on.
Thank you. I love answers to this question. What advice would you give someone who is new to sales? Thanks, Nadia, for asking that question. I'd like to take that. What advice would you give?
If I took that one, if I would be listening to some sort of sales material or podcast or reading something every day, I think, and of course still do that now. I think it's the more you can learn about what works, what doesn't work, how can you approach it, how can you keep getting better at it, really trying to get a lot of feedback, a lot of practice. I think when you're talking about mastering skills, etc., to me it's the whole learning piece, that commitment to, depending on what field you're in terms of sales, really reaching out for those. There's so many good resources online now, and obviously Sue has some amazing ones as well. So I think really committed to do it, that daily digest.
Thank you. And there's a comment here, Nadia, find a great mentor, practice, practice, practice.
Yeah. If I can say, you've got to get out there, but make sure you always have a reason to engage with people and never be boring. Always have something that makes, that will be of interest to them. Look at how you can serve and help them and create a fair exchange of value. So use your curiosity, use your interest in helping solve problems, and just get out there. We know statistically that people who hesitate to get out there versus those who don't are 5 times less productive. So you want to get out there. That's the assertive part of selling, which most people go, eek, have a bit of an anxious moment about. And you can learn how to get out there, and you can learn how to actually engage with people proactively and on the front foot for all the right reasons and do it professionally. You've got to learn to master that. That's a skill most people find tricky. Some are natural at it, but most aren't. But it's something you absolutely learn and really, then start helping people, and then people want to keep working with you.
Great. And a question from Simone, how do we increase the appeal in the recruitment space for sales roles to women?
I'll jump in on that one just quickly, because I think we've done a lot of work on this at Loan Market around bridging that gap from a secure income to being self-employed, which may not be or may be sales related. And so how do we show women, and I think we were talking about their household, those people that rely on them, you know, that it might be a slower first 6 months or 12 months. How do we give them that stability of income and show them a pathway, financial and structured, around learning, and so that the whole household can see the progress that this person's making and that the sacrifices are worth it and that you will be successful. So I think in that recruitment space, having detailed pathways that help people see that success will be there, I think that helps you then take that leap, because I think women innately know they will be good at this and that they want to do this, but they may fear of, you know, putting the family out or not succeeding soon enough. So I think really identifying what are those steps in between helps people then move into new roles.
Thank you. Lynn, would you like to comment on that as well?
No, that's fine. I was just agreeing with what Andrea said. I'm just nodding.
Great.
I've got just a couple of things on that topic. Is we have to set up more effective recruitment practices where we actually give women a fair chance. I mean, you know what they do, of course, in orchestras is they have blind auditions and those kinds of things to actually help take away the gender lens. So there are ways and means of actually help creating more fairer recruitment selection practices. And so we just want to be able to start to sort of put those in place. And as I said, also redefine and put forward what good selling actually looks like. So it's not seen, as we've said, this combat sport where you, and also too, one of the things we can do is make some income in sales, the income needs to be more secure because the type of selling we now do is more complex. So it's not transactional anymore. And there's a whole lot of stuff written around that too. So there's a number of things we can do to make it more attractive for women to come into sales and be amazing.
Right. Well, we've got 2 minutes to go, and I have one more question that I would like to put to the panel. It's an interesting discussion. This is from Natasha. How do you stay assertive and get men reporting to you to listen and follow your direction without alienating or hurting a man's ego? Brief responses required.
Radical simplification would be my answer to that. So radical simplification in terms of, it's been really clear that we get to common ground, that we're data-driven, purpose-built. So we absolutely begin with the end in mind. We know what we're trying to do. We worry less about people's ego and more about what we're doing and why we're doing it. Channel Simon Sinek around why, so that the team member understands why, and hopefully all of those gender, and I would suggest other biases, might just fade into the background when presented with a well-reasoned, thought-out, data-backed reason, data-backed scenario of why we're doing this.
I think that was an excellent answer. Can't add much to that other than depends on the size of the ego, probably.
And yeah, keep it about facts and information and actions and behaviours rather than making it personal, and make sure that everyone is included. I find if we make it human-centred and inclusive and we ask people to participate and we actually help them have a say, and everyone's say is listened to, and we work together collaboratively, you'll find most of the blokes work with you on that. They love it, actually. They don't like this whole combat aggressive stuff either. Majority, it's only a few that get their noses out of joint. So let's work for the greater good. And I'm sure we can create great change.
Terrific. Well, we are right on 2 o'clock. So I am going to thank everybody on the panel, Lynn, Andrea and Sue. And I also want to thank everyone for coming along today. I hope you found it very inspiring and interesting, and please, make contact with us and let us know how you're going. And we look forward to meeting you in the workplace to continue this work. So thanks, everybody. Thanks very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.